Good morning and welcome to our first Facebook Live broadcast. I'm Ashley Schrader, Marketing Specialist here at Bryan, and I'm here with Dr. Dave Miers. He's the Counseling and Program Development Manager for Bryan Mental Health Services. Thanks for joining us today, Dave.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're excited to be doing this as well. So today we're going to be talking about negative self-talk and how it can impact your life. So we do ask that you like our video, and if you have any questions, feel free to submit them in the comment section below. So let's get started and jump in and get the conversation started. Okay. So Dave, let's start with the basic question. What is negative self-talk?
Well, first of all, I want to explain what self-talk is. So self-talk is that internal dialogue that we have going on in our mind. It's that voice that talks to ourselves in our mind. I often consider it like a digital voice recorder that's always playing, but it's also always recording the thoughts that we have in our mind. And it's those thoughts that can create filters in our thinking. So we have thinking that goes on sometimes for years, and that thinking then creates filters which can negatively influence our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors. So when we think about self-talk, that self-talk leads to how we feel, which ultimately leads to the behavior in which we embark on. So we may not realize that we have these filters because, like I said, it goes on for years sometimes that we're having these thoughts. And it's important to know that self-talk can't change reality, but can change how one perceives reality. So if it's raining outside and we think, it's going to be a gloomy day, that's that self-talk that's creating our perception of the reality, but it's not going to change the rain.
Right.
So it's important that we talk about filters a little bit. So one of the filters, there's many different types of filters, but one I want to talk about is the emotional reasoning filter. And the premise behind that filter is that it's our emotions, the feelings we have, that validate the thoughts that we're having. So I'm going to give you an example. So let's say that we have a phone call, and it's summertime, and the holidays are upon us, and somebody invites us over for a barbecue. But in our mind, we're telling ourselves, I'm not likable. Nobody cares about me. They're just asking out of pity. If I go to the party, I'm just going to be a downer. I'm going to ruin the party. Nobody cares about me. Nobody wants to be around me. So what that leads to is a feeling of kind of loneliness, maybe some depressive feelings with that feeling of loneliness. And then when you have that feeling of loneliness, it's that feeling that then validates those thoughts that I was having. They're just asking me out of pity. So my behavior would be then, in most cases, no, thanks for asking, but I think I'm just going to stay home. So then I isolate and I stay home.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you go into that a little bit further? I think that's a great example, but how can some of this self-talk impact our viewers negatively?
Well, it's important to know that it's natural to have a wide range of thoughts. I mean, we all have negative thoughts, but it's important that we have positive thoughts, but to know how those negative thoughts impact us. So it's when those feelings and emotions start impacting our daily life, at work, at home, at school, with our relationships, that negative self-talk can influence things in a negative way. A couple different types of negative self-talk, where the self-talk is where we worry a lot, or let's say we are criticizing ourselves a lot. So an example that I gave, where it can be harmful to ourselves, is that the person's criticizing themselves. They're saying that nobody cares about me, I'm going to ruin the party, I just can't be around people. So I'm criticizing myself, and so then again that leads to my behavior of saying, no, I don't want to go. Well, then that's impacting my relationships because I'm not going to be around the people who could help me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. If you're just joining us today, I'm sitting down with Dr. Dave Miers talking about negative self-talk. And just remember to like our video and also submit your questions in the comment section below. So Dave, what can our viewers do to turn these negative thoughts around and focus on the positive?
Okay. Well, there's several things that I'm going to talk about today. 9 or 10 different things that just some tips that individuals can try on their own.
Great.
And the first couple of things I'm going to combine, I call it journaling and self-interrogation. So in the example I gave, you would be rewinding the tape. Person asks you to the barbecue, you're writing down your thoughts, but then you interrogate yourself. So then you look at the thought and you say, well, gosh, I said I'm going to ruin the party. When have I been to a party that I've ruined? Chances are you haven't. So then you catch yourself saying, you know, gosh, that thinking is irrational. I need to change the way I'm thinking. Another way to do that is to reframe the situation. So think of positive thoughts. And oftentimes say it 3 times. You can do this, you can do this, and the third time say, I can do this. So I can get to the party, I can do this, it's going to be okay. So those are affirmations, but then to reframe it, I would say, I'm tired of this loneliness. I'm tired of kind of the self-pity that I'm having. Being around these friends is good for me. So I'm going to go to this party and it's going to be fun, you know. And you have to believe that. You have to believe that it's going to work. Imagery is one that I want to talk a little bit about. Is that imagery is where you imagine yourself being successful in the situation. So in the example that I gave, you go to the party and you would imagine yourself talking and interacting and having a good time. One example I want to share where I learned a lot about imagery, which I think might help kind of reframe how you can apply imagery to pretty much anything. When I was playing sports in college, I played football in college, and I was a part of a football team that the whole 4 years were very successful. But one of those years, the team was very successful, and they were inducted into the Hall of Fame, the College Hall of Fame, at that college. And people say, well, what was successful about that team? I mean, there's a lot of ingredients, athletes, coaching, a lot of ingredients. One of the ingredients that they used was imagery. I remember before games where they had a psychologist that would come in and practice imagery, where you would listen to music and you would imagine yourself in that game doing the things that were successful and winning and doing those positive things. So picture yourself using imagery in any example that where you're concerned about that. Going to work. Imagine myself going to work and having a good day. That can be very powerful. Relaxation is the deep breathing. So if I take deep breaths and kind of slow myself down, that's also going to slow down my thinking. Eating well, sleeping well, and exercising are very important. So if I eat well, your body feels good. You're exercising, that gives you time to think, but also a healthy body oftentimes is, not oftentimes, it is a good thing to be healthy, but it helps your thinking. It helps you think straight, and especially sleep. If I don't get enough sleep, it's going to be hard to concentrate, and it's going to be hard to think through things in a rational way sometimes. And also surround yourself with positive individuals, individuals that can pull you up and support what you're trying to do. And the things I'm talking about, I mean, they're things to try, but as I said earlier, these thinking patterns that sometimes we have developed over time. So it's going to take a little bit of time those thought patterns are going to continue to come up, so we have to practice and practice and practice on these things. But it can be done. It can be done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. With everything,
Right.
The more you do it, the more easier it comes too. Yeah. So let's say our viewers are practicing and they're working on their negative self-talk, but they're still concerned. What advice do you have for them? What can they do to kind of focus on the positive, or what should they do about it?
Okay. Well, going back to what I was saying earlier, how it can impact you negatively, but if you notice that you are having trouble at work, at home, at school, in your relationships, and you think maybe, you're not sure what it is, but it could be your internal dialogue that's impacting that, and you've tried some of these things and you just continue to feel down and just not eating well, not sleeping well, those types of things, it's important to talk to a professional. Talk to your physician, talk to a mental health professional, talk to somebody who can evaluate to help determine what might be the best thing for you. One of the things that we offer at the hospital is our screenings, mental health screenings, and there's anxiety and depression screenings online. It's free, it's confidential, I have no way of telling who's taking the screening, mm-hmm. but it's a great way to take that and take it to your appointment and say, this is what results I received. It's not a diagnosis, but it can be very helpful. Even if you don't take the screening and you go see a professional, one type of therapy that's been shown to be very helpful for individuals trying to change their internal dialogue is cognitive behavioral therapy. There's a lot of research behind how that can impact depression and anxiety and many different things. But depression and anxiety are the two most common mental illnesses, but they're also the two of the most treatable mental illnesses. So there's many things a person can do, talking to a professional, but if you just want to check some things out and check your symptoms out, go to our website and to bryanhealth.org and take a screening.
Yeah, that's great advice. So our mental health screening is a great resource for our community. And like Dave said, you can just find that at bryanhealth.org right there on our homepage. So Dave, can you just share a little bit more about that screening? I know you said it's free, confidential, but what other things are involved?
Well, with the screening, you go in and you answer several questions about how you've been feeling, about how you've been thinking. Then at the end, it'll say, you have endorsed symptoms. Let's say you pick the depression screening. You have endorsed the symptoms of depression. Here's the next steps to take. Or you have not, but to remember this is not a diagnosis. If you still are having trouble, follow up with a professional. We have services here at the medical center. And so if it's an emergency and somebody feels like they're a danger to themselves or others and not sure if they need to be hospitalized, they could come to Bryan West on South 16th Street here in Lincoln. We have one of the only mental health emergency rooms of its kind in the United States, where we have a mental health emergency room. Basically, it's an emergency room in an emergency room, where I walk into the main emergency room. They determine me there for mental health. They screen and help get me connected to the right resources.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, too, with our online screening that you can find on our homepage, I think it's good for anybody to take. Even if you aren't concerned, I think it's just a good checkpoint to
Absolutely.
See how you're feeling that day. I think that's just a great thing that people can do. Would you agree?
I would agree. Anybody can take the screening, and it's important to take it, even if you aren't sure if you have the symptoms or not. Just take it and kind of see where you're at, and you can take it over and over again as many times as you want. But it's also for families. If you have a youth under 18 and you're concerned about them, it's really validated for 18 and over. So a parent can go into the screening, and then you can answer the questions based off of your observation of your teen, and then it will give you recommendations as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we also just want to take some time. We've had a couple questions come through during our video today. So let's take time to answer a few. And if we don't get to your question, if you have one, feel free to put it in the comments below. And we'll have Dave answer that later today. So make sure you stay tuned for that. So our first question comes from Brianna. She says, I tend to notice that my negative self-talk escalates when I make a mistake at work. My mind tells me I'm incompetent. Sometimes I get these feelings in social settings as well. Do you have any thoughts on that? Any advice for Brianna?
Well, I think it'd be important to practice maybe some of those, practice some of the things that we talked about, because with it's common to have negative thoughts once in a while, but it's also important to challenge those thoughts. So when we develop those patterns, when we continue to have thoughts that continue to pull us down, is to be ready to turn those around and try to turn those around into a positive way, to say, or maybe some of that self-interrogation, I have done this before, I am successful, I can do this. Try to turn it around into the positive. I know it sounds easy, but it takes time and it takes practice. And if a person continues to struggle with those things, then and it's okay even if a person isn't depressed or anxious, to seek the help of a therapist or to seek the help of somebody who's trained in cognitive behavioral therapy that can help you look at those thought processes and give you some concrete steps to try, because then you can combine that with the journaling that I talked about and continue to catch yourself and practice those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you kind of talked about some of the services, the mental health emergency room over at West Campus. What are some of the other services that are available? Bryan is a leader in mental health services in our region. So can you talk about, I know there's the RAP group, some other things. Can you briefly touch on those that might be a good resource for our viewers?
Absolutely. Bryan Medical Center is very supportive of our continuum of mental health services that we have. So when you come into the mental health emergency room, it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You see a mental health nurse or social worker. We have peer specialists. We're individuals with lived mental health experience that are in the emergency room during the day who help explain what's going to happen while you're there. And if you are admitted to the hospital, you would go up to our second floor above the emergency room. And we have inpatient units there. We have a youth program for ages 5 to 18. We have an adult unit. We have a specialized adult unit for affective disorders, which is for depression, anxiety. And we have our senior mental health unit. So inpatient is the most intensive level. It's short-term crisis stabilization. Average length of stay is generally about 3 to 5 days. So you're there for stabilization. But we also have what's called partial hospitalization, where you spend the day with us, go home in the evening. And that's kind of a step down from inpatient, or you might bypass inpatient, go right to partial, or you might be seeing an outpatient therapist and then might need to bump up to partial. The third level that we have is the counseling center, and that's our traditional outpatient counseling center. It's located at Bryan West, and it's in the professional office building connected to the hospital. And we have area's greatest outpatient team of psychologists, licensed independent social workers. We have a nurse, assistant manager, who takes the calls and then screens those calls and assigns them to the most appropriate therapist, if we can help, if we have a therapist with the skills to help that individual. And if not, then we help refer them to somebody else who might be able to help them. Then we have our wellness groups. Those peer specialists I mentioned, they offer support groups in the community for anybody. It's open to anybody. And that information is on our website. Not only open to folks that are seeking our services, inpatient or outpatient, but if I just want to attend a wellness group and learn more about developing a wellness plan. So going back to the question that the person had earlier, Brianna had earlier, that might be an option, would be to look at the wellness group and to go in and develop a wellness plan and try some of the things that they can help you develop as well.
Yeah. So we've got a couple more questions from our viewers. Jan asked, do you have any positive self-talk exercises to practice?
Well, positive self-talk exercise would be to look at the thinking that you typically have and turn those things into positives, and to continue to use I statements. So the exercise I was talking about before, where you say, you can do this, I can do this. Self-talk means more when you say, I can do this. You have to believe it. So it's important to look at the situation, Jan, that you're wanting to turn around and practice saying, you can do this, or this is going to be okay, or whatever it might be, but then to personalize it to you, and then just continue saying that over and over in terms of your internal dialogue, and practice those things. Because that negative self-talk is something that's developed over time, as I was saying earlier, and those thoughts are going to continue to come for a while until we kind of retrain. It's kind of like that learning theory. We've learned that way of thinking. We have to try to relearn another way of thinking.
Yeah. We do have another question from Deb, and she asked, are there some thoughts on ways, or do you have some thoughts on ways to stop negative self-talk when you first notice that these thoughts are starting in your head? So when you're first starting this thought process, we kind of talked about you have the negative statements and you turn them around, but what if you're kind of catching yourself going, or I know I'm kind of going in a negative way here. Can you kind of almost stop it before it starts, I guess?
Absolutely, and that's a good question. A great question. They're all great questions, but it's a great question. It kind of ties back to Brianna's question. Another thing you can try is I often use I call it thought stopping. So when we have that negative self-talk that pops in our mind, you just basically you've talked to that negative self-talk, and you just say stop. Stop that thinking, which cues yourself to turn it around into more of a positive self-talk. So yeah, you can, but it's important to journal so you know what the thinking it is that you're looking for that you want to stop. But in Brianna's example, she gave some pretty clear examples of, okay, this is what I tell myself. Catch yourself, stop it, use the thought stopping, and then practice the positive self-talk.
Such great information, Dave. Thank you so much. And well, that's a wrap for our first Facebook Live broadcast. Just want to thank our viewers for watching and interacting with us today. And special thanks to Dr. Dave Miers for taking the time to sit down with us today and talk about how to stop those negative self-talk. that we have going on in our mind. We all have all those self-thoughts, so it's good to know how to stop the negative and focus on the positive. So remember, you can go to bryanhealth.org and take that free and confidential online mental health screening. And also remember to like the Bryan Health Facebook page so you can see more of our Facebook Live broadcasts in the future. So thanks everybody for watching, and have a great day.